Shalom Aleichem. With the help of Hashem, we're going to learn the Maamer, starting Megillah, Nekras, Aleph, and so on. This is a Maamer from h'tשי Dalet, which was 1954. We're going to do a basic translation. I'll put a link to the bottom to the Lahak website to access the full Maamer. And please leave any comments at the bottom. So, B'siyata Dishmaya, Shabbos Parshas Sav, Shushan Purim, h'tשי Dalet. This was said on the day after Purim, called Shushan Purim, in 1954. Megillah Nekrat B'Yud Aleph, B'Yud Beis, B'Yud GImmel, B'Yud Dalet, B'Tes Vov. The Megillah in the Mishnah, it says that the Megillah is read on the 11th, on the 12th, on the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th. Why does it have different days? Krachin hamukafin chema kurim b'Tes Vov. When you have a city that is walled, you read it on the 15th. That's what's called Shushan Purim, when this Maamer was said. Ukfarim ve'arayos gadoilo yizkorim b'Yud Beis, Yud Dalet. And the villages and the larger cities, they read on the 14th. Elisha kfarim makdimim liyom haknisa. However, that these villages, they have to go on the day that they would gather into the city anyways. So they made it convenient that if they're gathering together in order to get more people together on a Monday and Thursday when they're doing Torah reading, or when they're coming to the marketplaces, they would do it in order to make sure that people would be yotzi of hearing the Megillah. Meaning that in general, you divide the reading of the Megillah into two times, Yud Dalet ve'Tes Vov, into the 14th of the month of Adar, or the 15th. And the other times are only in order to allow them to have better days to bring more people together when they're anyways going to be in the city. Whether it's fitting the villages or it's fitting the city that they're going to be there, that's when they were able to read the Megillah. We need to understand what is the reason for the division of time in reading the Megillah. In the Megillah, it says itself, that the Jews accepted and they fulfilled and they accepted. According to the sages, it says that they fulfilled what they had already accepted. That Purim is itself the same concept as Matan Torah, of receiving the Torah. Even more than this, that Purim is the completion and the fulfillment of what started at Matan Torah. That in Matan Torah, receiving the Torah, the Jews accepted the Torah in a way that was forced upon them. However, on Purim, they accepted it with ratzon, with desire, and with Mesiras Nefesh, with self-sacrifice. Then, when they accepted the Torah on Matan Torah, it made a chiyuv, an obligation, to fulfill Torah and mitzvahs in a desirable way for the rest of the generations. If this is the case, it doesn't make sense why we have the difference in time of when we should read the Megillah on Purim. That in Matan Torah, receiving the Torah, says that the Jews were camped opposite the mountain. That it says when they're camped, it's saying it in a singular form. It says in the Mechilta, it says that that when the Jews were leaving Mitzrayim, they would travel with arguments, and they would rest, they would camp with arguments. However, here, when they received the Torah, it equated them all with one heart. It completes the Medrash, and it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, at the time that I am giving the Torah to my children, meaning giving to the children as one, which is with an achdus, with a unity and a lack of division specifically, even though there's an opinion that Moshe would receive it in his own mechitza, meaning his own section, and Aaron received it in his own section. Nevertheless, there was no division of time. Because receiving the Torah is the concept of achdus, of unity dafka. From this it's understood that Purim, which is the completion and the fulfillment of what started at Matan Torah, is for sure not shaykh. It doesn't make sense that you should have division. The im kain, and if so, we need to understand tzarich lahavin mahu hatam shebepurim yesh hischalkus hazmanim bein krachim lekfarim. So this is the main question of the whole Maamer. We need to understand if Purim is also a completion of Matan Torah, why would there be a difference in the time that it's read between the krachim and the kfarim? So to summarize Seif Aleph, we're saying that the Megillah is read on different times, starting from the 11th all the way to the 15th of the month. And we know that it's a completion of Matan Torah, but Matan Torah was given only on one day. And specifically, Matan Torah was a time that was showing on Achdus, so they all received it at the same time. And in a way of Achdus, if Purim is a continuation of Matan Torah, of receiving the Torah, why do we read the Purim Megillah on a time that is different times as opposed to Matan Torah that was given at one time? Seif Beis. V'yuven zeh behektin tchila ha'hefresh bein krach l'kfar beruchnis u'ba'avodah b'nefesh ha'adam. So to understand this, we need to preface first the difference between what's called a krach, that would be a walled city, for example, or a large city, to beruchnius, to a kfar, to a village, beruchnius, spiritually, and in the service of man. That this concept, which is called avodah, service of Hashem, is kol hatachlis, the whole purpose of why man was created. The Rebbe says, as the sages say, I was created only to serve my master. That in the service of Hashem, you can say there's a difference between a kfar, a village, versus a krach, a city. As the sages say in the Gemara of Chagiga, it says Kol Shira Yecheskel Ra Yeshaya. It says whatever Yecheskel saw, Yeshaya also saw. So meaning that they had different visions. The Yecheskel was about 200 years after Yeshaya, and what Yecheskel saw was in much more detail, as the Gemara mentions. So what is it that he saw? Everything that Yecheskel saw, with all the details that he put through, Yeshaya also saw. As the Gemara says, I'm going to read inside the Gemara, actually it says, Kol Shira Yecheskel Ra Yeshaya, Lam Yecheskel Doime. What is Yecheskel likened to? Leven Kfar Shira Es HaMelech, like a villager who saw the king, that he never saw him before, so therefore he's very excited. What is Yeshaya likened to? Leben krach shira es hamelech, like somebody who was a city dweller and he did see the king. Meaning that the excitement that comes from Yecheskel when he saw Hashem, when he had a vision of Hashem, was completely incomparable to that of Yeshaya, who was already familiar with Hashem, and he was raised in a way that he was he was not as affected. So therefore, the Rebbe is bringing out from this Gemara that there is a difference between a krach, a city, or to a kfar, to a village, in our spiritual service to Hashem. And the explanation of the difference between a city versus a village in the spiritual understanding could be understood in the difference between Yeshaya and Yecheskel. That in Yeshaya it says that he saw Hashem sitting on a chair, on a chair. The kisi who habriya and the nקראת, that when it says in Kabbalah, it says that when it says that there's a chair, this is referring to the world of Bria. That's called a kursaya. That's called a chair. Shemeir Sham Sfira Sabina. That over there is shining the sphera of Bina. Kamaimer ima ilah mikrana bikursaya. That it says that the supernal mother is nesting in her kursaya, in her nest. The Bina hu ina saga, the whole concept of Bina, understanding, is grasping, understanding something. The keshem sheba adam lamata inyanam shel hakoiches chabad hu hasaga, that just like a person down here below in this world, his whole concept is that the koiches of Chabad, the powers of his chachma bina das, is to understand. So too, up above in the sphere of Bina is also called grasping. That's why when Yeshaya had a vision of the Merkava, of the chariot, is that he was in the world of Bria, which is, in the world of Bria, is mainly the world of the angels that are called Srafim, the burning angels. Not so with Yecheskel, that his vision was something that was on a lower level, which was the place of the standing of the angels that are called Oifanim. That in the world of Bria, that over there is nesting the supernal mother, which is a concept of understanding. This is like what we understand down here below as understanding, coming into a pnimius, into an inner way. That when a person understands a concept in a grasping way, that he is encompassing that concept, and that it is encompassed by his mind. As we know, it says in Tanya that when a person thinks about something, he thinks about all the details of the thing, and then that thing that he's thinking about is now inside his seichel, inside his intellect, completely encompassed by his intellect. Hainu, da'a shebetchila hu masig rak es ha'shitpiyos ha'inyan bilvad, va'az hu mokif ba'seichel, that even though in the beginning he understands only the general area of the concept, but he is encompassing it with his seichel. This is only in the beginning when he doesn't fully understand it intellectually. However, afterwards he encompasses it with his intellect, and he brings it into his pnimius, into his insights. Since something that's intellectual, that's understanding, is pnimius, is something that's internal, so too in the higher world of Bria, that there is shining the chachma bina das of Hashem, therefore what's shining in the world of Bria is a shining and a revelation that's in an internal way. The fact that it's in pnimius is that it comes revealed in an orderly fashion. What does it mean in orderly fashion? That it has to come through all the 10 spheres that's mentioned in Kabbalah. That in general they are divided into 3 sections. The 10 spheres are into Chabad, Chachma Bina Das, which is understanding, Chagas, which is Chesed Gevurah Tiferes, which is the emotional attributes, and Nehi, which is the lower level of the emotional attributes, Netzach Chod Yesod, which is more about action. So to summarize Seif Beis, we're going to say, to understand this, we need to know what is the difference between a kfar versus a krach, and to understand this, we need to know what is the difference generally between Yeshaya versus Yecheskel. And we're saying Yeshaya comes from the world of Bria, which is connected to the sphera of Bina, which is understanding, and he's connected to the angels that are called Srafim, as opposed to Yecheskel, he's connected to the angels that are called Oifanim, and he's on a lower level. And the whole concept of Yeshaya, that he's in the world of Bria, which is understanding, is that it has to come down in a way that is internalized. Meaning it has to go through all the 10 spheros that are generally broken down into 3, Chabad, Chagas, Nehi. Seif GImmel. Ubir Inyan Bepratio used to explain this whole concept of how to bring something Bepnimius more specifically. Hine Hasagas Hasrafim Shabo'ilam Habriya Hi Loirak Bechayusam Elagam Be'ila Umekor Chayusam. That the understanding of these angels in the world of Bria is not only in their chayus, in their life force, but even in their cause and in the source of their chayus, where they get their chayus from. V'hainu shehasagasam hi loirak bechinois kamoishu bebriya, meaning that their understanding is not only on the life force that comes from the world of Bria, elagam be'ilasoi kamoishu be'atzilus shu be'avdala mehem, but even in the world that is above it, which is the cause of the world of Bria, which is the world of Atzilus, which is completely removed from them. That in Atzilus it says him and his causations are all one. That even though their source of their life force is completely removed from them, even the chayus, meaning the life force that comes into the world of Bria, is removed from them. And specifically, the source of the life force in the world of Atzilus is completely removed from them. Nevertheless, since they are Bali Hasaga, they are masters of understanding, and understanding means that it has to come inward, like we mentioned above. Therefore, the light and the life force that's removed from them also has to come into them internally. What does that mean? That it becomes felt in them in an internal way that it's removed from them. So they understand how the life force is removed. This is what it means that it says that the Srafim and Yeshaya, these angels, they are standing mima'al loy, from above him. What does that mean? Hainu mima'al chayusam. They're standing from above their chayus, their life force. Meaning that their source and their cause of the chayus that they have is felt by them in an internal way. That since they are removed from them, they understand it in a way of havdalah. Nevertheless, they say, like we say every day in prayer, we say kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. That this concept of kadosh, 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 Hashem is holy, 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 in general is a light that's called memali kolamim, that it fills all the world. That memali, something that's filled, means that the light is felt in a way that's primius, that's internal. The ultimate understanding is in order to arouse the midos, to arouse the emotional attributes. The kasher lo yish his oirus amidos hareze shegam ha'asaga ina amitis, that when, or that since, if a person doesn't have an arousal of his midos, this is a proof that the understanding is not true. The hasaga amitis hu shenirgeshes bahamidos. True understanding of a concept is that you feel it in your emotions. Shezeu tachlis ha'asaga, which is the ultimate understanding. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad v'ahavta. And the Rebbe proves this from the pasuk of Shema Yisrael, which is finishing by Echad, and then the first word of the paragraph is v'ahavta. Shema hu milashon hasaga. When it says Shema, listen, that's a concept of understanding. But it's not enough to only have understanding. A person also has to have a concept of v'ahavta, that you shall love, meaning the emotions. Therefore, the understanding of these angels affects in them an arousal of the emotions. That they're standing with love like a burning fire. That's why they're called Srafim. Because they are burnt up by their understanding. Just like it's not enough to have a concept of hasaga, of understanding, which is Shema, but a person also has to have an arousal of the emotions. So too, it's not enough to have an arousal of the midos. But rather, a person also has to have the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs in actuality, that this is what the Shema continues and says, ukshartem. The kai gam al kol ha-mitzvahs, gam al kol ha-mitzvahs, that this refers to all the mitzvahs. Why would ukshartam, to tie, which refers to the tefillin, refer to all the mitzvahs? K'mayim razal, like the sages say, huksha kol ha-Torah l'tefillin, that they equate the entire Torah to the tefillin. Hainu shaloi mafsik. It's not enough to only have the chabad, which is understanding, or the chagas, which is arousing of the midos, of the emotions. But the ultimate purpose is that you should draw down into the netzach hoyd yesoid, which is action, which is asiya, actuality. So just like we learn by ourselves this whole concept of chabad, chagas, nehi, so too is by the malachim that are above. It's not enough to have an understanding and an arousal of the midos. A person also, the angels also has to have nehi, that's a chodesh davka. Even though by angels you can't say that there's any concept of action in actuality, but these angels even have by them the concept of netzach hoyd yisoid, and this is the whole concept of saying song, that they would sing songs. That this is the cleaving in actuality that comes from an arousal of love. That the whole concept of love that's burning like fire is the ratzoi, which is running to Hashem. And the reading of the songs, the singing of the songs, is the concept of shuv, which is returning back. Which that shuv is translated into the netzach hoydesoid in the spherois. V'zehu ma she'omnim kadosh 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 Hashem sfakois meloch laris kvodoi. This is what we say: Holy, holy, holy is Hashem, the God of legions, that He fills all the earth with His glory. The kadosh shu bechinas ratzoi. When it says kadosh, it's a concept of ratzoi, of running. Meloch laris kvodoi hu bechinas shuv. And when they would reply back and say, Meloch chol ha'aretz kvodo, the whole world is filled with His kavod, with His glory, with His honor, that's a concept of returning, which is shuv. Therefore, the Rebbe is concluding this seif by saying that the general concept of grasping of the srafim, the understanding that they have, is in the light of Memalek Olamim. Which is an internal light that affects all the three levels of Chabad, Chagas, and Nehi, which is the intellectual concepts, the emotional concepts, and the ones that come down to action. And the angels affect it all the way until they come down to the full glory of Hashem in this world. So to summarize Seif GImmel, is that this whole concept that the srafim, these angels, are able to bring something, the understanding into Ptimius, is that it goes through, not only is it enough to have understanding, but they also have to have emotions. And not only is it enough to have emotions, but they also have to have a concept of action. By the action of the angels is that they would sing songs. Seif Dalet. So comparing to what we read before of the Srafim, Rebbe says the Oifanim, the other angels, the lower level of angels, they are on a level of Ra'ash Gadol, a large sound, a great sound. The reason for this loud sound, noise, is because of the lack of understanding and the concealment that they go through. this whole concept is that they don't understand at all. Ki im she'ein zen nirgash bepnimius behasaga. It's not that they don't understand at all, but rather that they don't have a feeling of a pnimius of their understanding. They don't bring it in an internal way of their understanding. Shezeu sibas ha'ra'ash, that this is the whole reason for the loud sound. U'kamei lamata kasher adam mevin masig davar mufla harei zen nirgash bepnimiusoi, that just like down here below by a person, that when a person understands and he grasps something that is wondrous, he feels it in his insides. However, when he hears something that is wondrous, but he doesn't understand it, he doesn't grasp it fully, it affects him still. But this is not an effect, an internal effect that he feels the thing. But rather, the effect is that it causes him to be completely nullified out of his existence. It's just too much for him. That is why they have this whole concept of making a loud sound. So too by these angels called the Oifanim, that upon them it says misnaseim, that they are standing l'umas hasrafim, opposite of the srafim, the higher level angels. Hainu shikasherhem shoimim shiras hasrafim shoimim kadosh 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 hashem svako, is that when they hear the song of the srafim, that they're saying kadosh kadosh kadosh, the gimel bechinos kadosh hem keneged gimel oisyos harishonos shel shem havaya, that the first three letters of Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav, is corresponding to the song of Kadosh 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 that is sang by these angels. That these three letters, these three words, are completely in a way of kedusha, of holiness, and havdalah being removed. That the tzva says, the sages say that it's a letter that is savadilei on its own. Meaning that the chayus of the nivraim, the life force of the creations, is only on a level of the last hey. So Hashem's name is Yud Kei Vav Kei. So the first three letters is corresponding to these angels, and the last hey is for the creations. Shehu ata klila deleis bei mashasha, as it says, or hagirsa deleis bei mamasha. So this last letter of hey is a light letter that has no mashasha, it has no sense to it. Or the other opinion is that it has no mamashus, it has no physicality to it. However, the first three letters of Hashem's name is behavdalah, is completely removed. That when the oifanim hear the songs of the srafim, which is a level of godliness that is removed from the worlds, and they don't understand this havdalah, this removal, and therefore it affects them that they are completely nullified out of their existence, and therefore they have this ra'ash gadol. Amnam be'emes hine habitul v'hara'ash shebe'avodas ha'oifani megila maila yusrim avodas hasrafim she'i behasaga. Now the Rebbe is going to take a twist, and he's going to say, nevertheless, in truth, the bittul and the loud sound of the service of the oifanim reaches a higher level than that of the srafim. Hainu she'avodas hasrafim ba'ofen shel hasaga hi be'ir hamemala kulamim kanal. The avodah of the srafim that we mentioned in the previous paragraph, in their understanding, reaches the light that's called mamali kulamim that we mentioned above. Masha'in ken avodas ha'oifanim shehi bera'ash shemitzad heder hasaga. Not so with the service of the oifanim, which is with a great sound, because of a lack of understanding, she'ein ha'or musag etzlam, that the light is not understood by them. Harezeh or hasoiviv kolamim shu behavdalah mehem. This is a light of what's called soiviv kolamim, that it's encompassing all the worlds. That's completely removed from them. Now we can find a greatness of these oifanim over even more than the srafim. Shahasrafim ein maskines Hashem ela le'acher gimel tevois. This is a Gemara that is brought in Chulin, that it says that the Srafim, that they do not recognize Hashem's name except for after reading 3 words, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. However, these Oifanim, they recognize or they mention Hashem's name after 2 letters. Baruch Kvoid Hashem Mim Koimoy. Right? That's because the avodah of the Ofanim, even though they're a lower level, they tap into the higher level of Soiv Kolamim. This is why also the Srafim, they have a Kadosh with the Vav, Kadosh spelled with the Vav, the Kai al Orha Mamale Kolamim, which refers to Mamale, the Hav Shehu Kadosh Muvdal, even though they are removed and separate. The fact that it has a Vav, which is referring to Hamshach, of drawing down, meaning that they feel their understanding. But it's not in the word of Kadosh, which we are saying Kadosh without a Vav is a Mila Legarmei, a word of its own, which is completely removed. When the Oifanim say, blessed is the glory of Hashem, mimakoimai, from his place, mimakoimai daika, specifically from his place, the makoim beruchnius hu, maila kamoshikasu v'rambam, that a place of ruchnius is maila, is above. Shazor baruch kvod Hashem mimkoimai, blessed is Hashem from his place. Hainu shem havai kamoshu ben ma'alasoy. This is the name of Hashem, the way it is in its elevation. Hainu behavdala, the way it is separate. The way it's completely removed from the whole order of Hishtalshus. Shazeu inyan na'li yoisim imasha srafim oimrim kadosh v'gomer Hashem. This is much higher than what the Srafim say, Kadosh, 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 and then mention Hashem's name. Shu Hashem the Hishtalshus. When the Srafim mention it, it's the Hashem within the Hishtalshus. Shu be'oifen the Kadosh bevav, which is Kadosh the way it's spelled with the vav. The Kadosh milei magarmei, but not the way the Kadosh is spelled without the vav. So, to continue, the whole concept of this is the way it is by a person down here below. When a person understands something, it's limited. Not so when a person doesn't understand something, it's not limited. And it goes much higher. This is the difference of when we say Shema Yisrael, and we say Ve'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha. That you should love Hashem with all your hearts, with all your soul, and with all your might. When it says with all your soul, that's according to reasoning. Shazeu mashakasuv Shema Yisrael v'gemer ve'ahavta v'gemer. That this is what it means. Shema Yisrael, listen, O Israel, ve'ahavta, that you shall love Hashem your God, and so on. Shal yedeha asagahu ba lehava. Because the person's understanding that he should love God, he comes to loving God. U'b'mei lehava hi behagbala. But because it's his own understanding, therefore it is behagbala. It's limited. Even when he gets to the second level of b'chol nafshecha, even when he's able to, that he wants to give up his soul, which is self-sacrifice, even that self-sacrifice is because it makes sense. Therefore it's limited. That since the Mesiras Nefesh comes in a way of understanding, therefore the Mesiras Nefesh itself, the self-sacrifice, is its own entity. Is Moiser Nefesh. You have the person who is Moiser Nefesh, and he's limited. However, the third level of Ve'ahavta, which is called B'chol Me'odecha, with all your much, or all your might, B'chol Mida B'mida, with every single attribute you have, then he reaches completely higher than limitations. Since this is not about his understanding, therefore his b'chol me'edecha is completely bli gevul, which means it is unlimited. Since the avodah of the Oifanim is not because of their understanding, then the loud sound that they make reaches to the level of greatness Hashem, and He is very praised. So to summarize Seif Dalet, we show that the whole concept of the Oifanim versus the Srafim is that even though they're on a lower level, they're able to reach a higher level of Hashem. And the Rebbe proves this from what we say every day in davening, that by the Srafim we say Kadosh, 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 3 words, and then we come to Hashem's name. As opposed to the Oifanim, we say Baruch Kvoid Hashem Bimkomoi. Baruch Kvoid is only 2 words. So you see that it's a faster way that we get to Hashem's name. And also the Rebbe says that the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh is referring to the level of, is referring to the level where the got interrupted. The Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh is for 3 words. Also in Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh represents the 3 first letters of Hashem's name. Yud Kei Vav, as opposed to the last letter, which is the last Hay, the final Hay, which is all about the Nivraim, that is connected to the Oifanim. So the Rebbe says that even though they're on a lower level, they reach a higher level in Hashem, which is called Soiviv Kolamim, and therefore they're able to get to a level which is called Bli Gevul, as opposed to the understanding of the Srafim, since they understand. Yes, they understand a lot, but their understanding is limited. The Oifanim, on the other hand, since they have a lack of understanding, their lack of understanding allows them to reach much higher, where it's unlimited. Seif Hay. So now we can apply this to ourselves. That just like they have the avodah in a person, he has also these 2, by the angels, so too you have these 2 avodas, these 2 services of Hashem by a person. Avodas HaSrafim, Shi Avodah HaSaga. You have the service of the Srafim, the angels that are called Srafim, which is understanding. Avodas HaOifanim, Shi Avodah the Hoida Ubitul. You have the service of the Oifanim, which is a service of Hoida, acknowledgement, recognition, and Bittul, and self-nullification. That the concept is that the foundation and the beginning of avodah is that of hoida'a and bittul, of recognition and self-nullification. That the beginning of every single day, the avodah is that we first say moida ani, and then we start our tefillah with hoidu. Shavoida zu hi ha'ikr, that the avodah is the main thing. And this itself, you have a avodah that is lower than a reasoning, lower than understanding. And you also have a acknowledgement that is above reasoning. But in general, the foundation and the ultimate purpose of serving Hashem is to have an acknowledgement and a self-nullification to Hashem. So at the beginning, you have an avodah which is lower than reasoning. The first you wake up in the morning, you open up your eyes, you say moida ani, and then when we come to tefillah, before we start doing anything else, we say hoidu, which is below reasoning. That this acknowledgement is before we start singing the Tehillim within Tefillah in Shachar is called Psuke de Zimra, the verses of praise. And it's also before we read the blessings of Krishma. Therefore, the acknowledgement that we have is lower than Tam V'das, lower than reasoning. That even for sure that we have a little bit of understanding. This itself shows that there's a moida, that there's a acknowledgement and a bittul that comes from a little bit of understanding, some sort of understanding. The Rebbe is relating this back to the the level of the angels that we call them the Oifanim, and why they make a big ra'ash, they make a big sound. Sha'af shahara shalahem hu mitzad heder asaga, even though that their sound comes from a lack of understanding. Mikol makam harei sibas harash hi mitzad zeh shehem misnaseim u'masasrafim v'shoimim hashira shalahem. Nevertheless, this is the cause of their sound that comes because they are standing against the Srafim, these angels, and they hear the song of the angels, of the Srafim. So we can relate this parallel also to the service of man. That the acknowledgement and the bittul is because of a certain understanding that they have. Nevertheless, even though we can understand that it's good to serve Hashem, the main thing is to have an acknowledgement, a thanks, not just because of understanding. The Rebbe gives an example that this is like an ubar, a baby in the mother's stomach, that its head is between its knees. Even though this baby has a head and all the form of a body, his head is in between his knees. That anything that is felt by him in a revealed fashion is only on the level of netzach hoidisoid. It's close to the feet, it's close to the knees, which is the lower part of the spheroids. Now we can tie back to what is the difference between the avodah of the oifanim, the lower level angels, let's call them, to the avodah of the srafim, which is the higher level angels. Srafim yesh gimel hatzir dechol gimel habechinos chabad chagas nehi kanal Seif GImmel. That by the srafim you have a form of all three levels of the entire, all the spheroids, which is chabad, chagas, and nehi. You have all those 9 spheros, which is generally the whole entire counting of the spheros. Elosh ikaram hu inyan ha'asaga. But the main thing is that they understand. V'hainu shegam b'bchinas chagas v'nehi meir ha'asaga. That even on the level of the chagas and the nehi is shining this concept of asaga. Mitzada asaga hine haseder d'tzir chabad chagas hu begilui. And because of their understanding, the whole order of the form of Chabad and Chagas is revealed, but not so by the Oifanim, that all they have is an acknowledgement of things, even though they have a whole tzir, they have a whole form. Their main thing is hoida, is recognition. They're all everything else that they have is completely concealed. This is what it means, like a baby who has its head between its knees. You don't see the whole form altogether, but it's all there. That this is the whole concept of what a person goes through every single morning, of having recognition that's lower than reasoning, below reasoning, of when we wake up in the morning we say Moida'ani, and when we start to do Shachris we say Hoidu. After we reach this concept of recognition, which is below reasoning, the person goes through the avodah of what's called Pesukei de Zimra, which is now starting to understand things. This concept now, Pesukei de Zimra, is like a baby that comes out of its mother's womb, that he has now a form that his head and his feet are revealed in a way that the head is higher than the feet and the head is higher than the whole entire body. So now too you can have in the service of understanding, which is now going from below to above. Pesukei de Zimra, Birchos Krishma u'Krishma. So you have the whole order of prayer that we go through, that we say all the praises of Pesukei de Zimra, then we come to do the blessings of Kriyashma and Kriyashma itself. And afterwards we come to the avodah of real recognition, which is not lamat mitamadas, not below reasoning, but is above reasoning. Which is with all your might, with all your much. And then the person finally reaches Shmona Esrei, the Amida, which is a complete bittul, ka'avda kamimari, like a servant before his master. She'eno shum mitzius la'atzma klal. He has no existence of his own. Rather, he wants to do only what the master wants. That this is a pipe that through him is going to come the word of Hashem. Like we say before Shmona Esrei, every Shmona Esrei, we say Hashem safasai tiftach. Hashem, open up my lips, that I will sing your praise. It's going to be Hashem's praise, not about us, but about Hashem. And specifically the level of moedim, which is before Shmona Esrei, which is a complete bittul b'metzius. That this type of avodah is now above reasoning. That the ultimate avodah is that of recognition, of acknowledgement to Hashem. That this acknowledgement is not because of understanding. Rather, it is bli gvul, it's unlimited, and it's without any interruption. That the avodah of understanding is in his own mitzius, and it's limited. Not so with this type of service to Hashem, that the person gets completely nullified out of his existence, and he doesn't have any limitations or any interruption whatsoever. Now we can just like we can understand this by us, let's go and understand it back by the Srafim and the service of the Oifanim. That the Srafim, they say Gimel Palmim Kadosh, 3 times Kadosh. That the reason for this is that the day is made up of 12 hours. Therefore, every 4 hours they say the word Kadosh, they say holy. That the saying of the word Kadosh that they say is only enough to last for 4 hours. Therefore, their avodah is because of understanding, and therefore the existence and the avodah that they do is behagbala, is limited. And it's possible to have an interruption after 4 hours. But the oifanim, the avodah that they do is with complete bittul, and it's in a way that it is bli gvul. So just to compare and to summarize Seif Hay, the Rebbe is saying that just like you have by the Srafim and the Ofanim, so too you have by us. That we go through this similar thing. That in the beginning of the morning we start with Moida Ani, which is a concept of acknowledgement to Hashem, which is below Tam V'das, below reasoning. Then we come to Psuke de Zimra and Birchos Krishma, which is starting to have a level of understanding, until we get to the ultimate bittul, which is Shmona Esrei, and we come to a acknowledgement to Hashem, which is higher than Tam V'das. So the Rebbe is saying, if you compare us to the Srafim and the Oifanim, so the Oifanim would be like us when we come to before having an understanding of Hashem, but we just do it. Then we come to the Srafim where we are coming to a level of understanding. Finally, we get to a level of Moedim in Shmona Esrei, which is the highest level, where again, like the Oifanim, that we have a bittul to Hashem that is completely unlimited. Seif Vov. That these two services of understanding and acknowledging are split up in their time. That in general, this is the difference between Shabbos for the 6 days of the week. Then on the 6 days of the week it says, 6 days you shall do work. That you shall do work in a way of commandment. Shezeu inyan avodas habirurim, which is the whole concept of refinement. So 6 days a week we have to do birurim, refinement. Avodas habirurim hi dugmas inyan ha'ida. And the whole concept of refinement is that it's like a hodah, that we just have to do it, an acknowledgement. The gamish ba'avodas habirurim sarach ha'mevare lehislabish b'levusha ha'misparer. That just like in the service of refining something, the one who is refining has to get enclosed into the garments of that which he's refining. Harihu kasher im ha'olam, meaning he's connected with the world. But he's refining it. That this is like a concept of hoidah, of acknowledgement. That the person is not understanding and he doesn't shine in a revealed way. It's just that he is moida, he is acknowledging that he's doing this. However, through the refinement that happens on the 6 days of the week, it says that a person who toils on Erev Shabbos and the day before Shabbos, he's going to eat on the day of Shabbos b'derech memela, in an automatic way. That if you're going to prepare, you're going to have food to eat. Shabbos is a concept of oinig, of pleasure. Like it says that you shall be satiated and you shall take pleasure from its goodness, from your goodness. That the pleasure that the person is taking because he's understanding a revelation of light. However, the ability, the power, the potential to be able to do refinement in general, and specifically that in order to be able to eat on Shabbos in an automatic way, that it's going to automatically happen, that the 6 days of the week also have to have a ray of Shabbos, they have to have a shining of Shabbos. Which, what is the level of Shabbos within the 6 days of the week? That's the concept of tefillah, of prayer. That even though you have in the prayers, you have the middle 12 brachas that are for requesting our needs, shehem habakashu isgam al dvarim gashmim, that we're requesting physical things. Mikol makom haschalahu bebaruch ata Hashem. Nevertheless, the beginning of each bracha is baruch ata, blessed are you, Hashem. Hainu shehaschala hi hamshachas ha'ur. That every time we say the blessing, we are drawing down a level of light. But this that's done in the 6 days of the week is only a ha'ara, only a ray of Shabbos that's within the 6 days of the week. Therefore, you have these 12 brachos. Therefore, we have to define them in a way that's many letters in an orderly fashion. That's why we have them in these 12 brachos every single day. But after we go through the 6 days of the week and we have the prayer of Shabbos, we reach the level of Shabbos itself, and specifically the prayer of Shabbos. That once we've reached the prayer of Shabbos, we don't no longer have these 12 requests of physical things like we do during the week, but we only have one prayer, only one bracha. And that bracha is connected to that of pleasure. Or that this concept of pleasure is because of a revelation of light. So to summarize Seif Vov, we're saying just like a person can have these two services of the angels of the Srafim versus the Eifanim, which is understanding versus acknowledgement, so too you have that within the week as well. The 6 days of the week when we're working with physical things is like a concept of hoidah, of just acknowledgement, not thinking about why we're doing it. But then as we go, then we get the ability to come to a level of understanding and an oineg specifically, which is Shabbos itself. Seif Zayin. Now we can go back to the original question that we had and understand the difference between Matan Torah, which was done on one day and only celebrated on one day, to Purim, which we can read the Megillah on the 11th all the way till the 15th. Why do we have this difference? V'tam ischalkus hazmanim shebehurim, and the whole reason of why we have a division of time within Purim. Now we can answer all these questions. Tihine mitzad hischalkus ha'avodah yishachol avodah yesh la zman miyuchad. That in terms of division of services of Hashem, that every service has a specific time. Lachen sarach liyus hischalkus zmanim. Therefore, you have to have a division of time. Amram b'matan Torah shehaya mitzad lamayla. But however, the receiving of the Torah, which came from Hashem above, meaning that the revelation that happened was from above to below. That it says in the Gemara, it says that he placed upon them, meaning he placed upon the Jews when they received the Torah, har, the mountain, kigigis, like a barrel upon our head, that if we're going to accept it, great, and if we don't, he's going to put the mountain on our head, meaning he forced us. But it's explained from the Alter Rebbe in Torah Or, that was a revelation of love that is very great, that came from Hashem from above. So if that was the case, therefore we didn't have a division of time. Meaning that if there was, or since there is, in terms of avodah down here below, there needs to be different times. However, by Matan Torah, since the revelation was from above to below, therefore there was no division of time. That answers the question why by Matan Torah we did not have a division of time, because the love that Hashem showed us at that time was from above to below, and it all came as one. Amnam bePurim kimo v'kiblu Yehudim. However, in the holiday of Purim, that it says that they fulfilled and accepted the Jews. Kimo mashi kiblu kfar. They fulfilled what they had already accepted in Matan Torah. Kiblu v'ratzon b'mesirus nefesh, that they accepted it in a desirable way and in a way of self-sacrifice. Umine az his chadesh inyan ha'avodah milamata l'mayla al kol ha'diros, and because they accepted upon themselves to fulfill what was accepted in Matan Torah, then there was a renewal, a novelty of the whole concept from below to above for the rest of the generations. Since it's coming from the Jews themselves, from below to above, therefore you have a division of time between when it's kfar, when it's a village, or a krach, or it's a city. The whole concept of a village is hoidah. This is the lower level of the oifanim that we mentioned. It's a hoidah. It's an acknowledgement. That he's connected to the world. But he's acknowledging his service to Hashem. Ukrach, the city, a city is a concept of understanding. Or he recognizes, he knows the revelation of light. And he understands how the light is separate from the world. This is the whole concept, that there are these walled cities. That this is the whole concept of the chema, as the sages say, ani chema, I am a wall. This is referring to the Torah. That the whole concept of the Torah is that it's a wall that separates between itself and the world. Therefore, there's a difference of time between a village and a city. That this is now why the Mishnah says that the Megillah can be read on the 11th, on the 12th, and so on and so forth. That the beginning starts from the number 11. Shu ois Vov and Hay. That the beginning comes from the 11th of Adar, which is corresponding, 11 is the same gematria as the two last letters of Hashem's name of Vav and Hay. If you take a Vav as a 6, Hay as a 5, those two together equals the 11. Beis oisus achrenis l'shem havaya, the last two letters of Hashem's name. Shem begematria Yud Aleph, which is the numerical equivalent of Yud Aleph on the 11. And then afterwards you can reach even higher. We go to Yud Beis, Yud GImmel, and so on. just like the Mishnah says, until you reach these walled cities, that they can read the Megillah on the 15th. Because they are mukafim, they are walled, which is the concept of the Torah. That the Torah is a wall that separates it from the world. Then not only that, but even more, that it affects that the Torah also in the world is also separate from the world. That this is also the specific detail of why the walled cities were from the times of Yehoshua ben Nun. The Yeshua was the first one to receive the Torah after Moshe got it. How do we know? Moshe kibel Torah miSinai u'mesara liYeshua. That it says Moshe received the Torah from Har Sinai, and he gave it over to Yeshua. Hainu the inyanoi shel Moshe hu beoifen shepnei Moshe kepnei chama. That we say that Moshe is in a way that it says that the face of Moshe was like the face of the sun. Sheuinyan shemesh havaya, like we say, is like the pasuk that says that it's a sun is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Hashem's name is like the sun. The Havayahu Lamaylam Ha'ilam, and the whole concept of Yud Kei Vav Kei is how he is completely removed from the worlds. Yeshua Haya Reish the Koifshim. Yeshua, who received it from Moshe, he was the head of all the conquerors of the land. I know Shehu Hachnis Es Bnei Yisrael Le'inyan Ha'avoda B'Lametes Melachos De'uvdin Dechol, meaning that he is the one who brought the Jews into the whole concept of serving with the 39 Melachos of that we do with the Uvdin Dechol, the acts that we do during the weekday. That was brought about by Yehoshua. Even though Yehoshua was the head of the conquerors, Seif Beis, it says about Yehoshua that he will never leave from the tent of Moshe, meaning he never left this concept of Moshe, the Pnei Moshe K'pnei Chama, that the face of Moshe is like the face of the sun. The sun of Yud Kei Vav Kei of Hashem, which is higher than the world. That the whole concept of a wall, which is referring to the Torah, affects the person that when he's in the world, he is removed from the world. That these walled cities that came from the times of Yehoshua ben Nun, which is now the whole concept of the completeness of a person's service, these cities that are walled cities, they come and they read on Tesvav. That on the 15th of the month, it says that the moon is in its fullness on the 15th of the month. And if you say you have Yehoshua, who is likened to the moon, that he received all of his rays from Moshe, which is like the sun, that this is the ultimate, is that Yehoshua was the one to receive it, and he's the one who started bringing out these walled cities. Shehu'inyan Hashem Shalom ve'akisi Shalom. That this is what it means, that the name is complete, and the seat is complete. Sheyumshach lamat be'agula shlema b'mheira ve'emenu lamat me'asar tfachim. That all this concept, that the moon being full, and the whole concept of reaching the 15th, the highest level, is going to draw down below in the Geula Shlema, the complete redemption, made happen speedily in 9 days. Down below, Me'asar Tfachim, below 10 Tfachim, which means physically in this world. So just to summarize, the last seif of this paragraph is now we can understand why there's a difference between the times of Matan Torah and Purim. At the times of Matan Torah, we said that Hashem gave us such a high level of love that is as if He forced us and it came from above to below. Therefore, it was all one time. However, when you go from below to above, the Purim, we accepted upon ourselves. And we had differences of how we did it, and therefore it was about us that we did it from below. There were different levels of time, starting with the 11th of the month, which corresponds to Hashem's last 2 letters of Hashem's name. If you take Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and you split it into 2, that you have the Vav and the Kei, that equals the number 11. So starting from the 11th of the month, that's when this whole service starts, that we do it in a way of complete bittul. And as we go to the 12th and the 13th and the 14th, the ultimate is that we reach the 15th, which is the time that it was done with the walled cities. And the walled cities started from Yehoshua. And Yehoshua represents the moon, and we know that the moon is in its fullness on the 15th of the month. Therefore, on the 15th of the month, when the moon is in its fullness, that's the ultimate time of being able to read the Megillah. That is the highest level, and the Rebbe says, may it happen speedily that we'll have this revelation down here below.